Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me again. As I'm sure many of you Telecaster and country guitar playing fans will know, the song Sleepwalk, originally recorded by Santo and Johnny, has become something of a standard in the tele world, with players like Arlen Roth and Danny Gatton doing incredible versions of it. Today I'd like to teach you my simple arrangement of it that focuses on keeping the original melody intact, whilst also embellishing with a few extra things like country bends and triad-based harmonizations, with the hope being that not only will you have a beautiful piece of music to enjoy playing, but there'll be something in here to learn for players of all levels. Okay, so grab your pick and get that Telecaster armed and ready, and let's go for it. So the song's in the key of C, it's in 6/8 time, and it kicks off with an 8-bar intro. Here's the progression. C, A minor, F minor, G7, C, A minor, F major this time, G7. So function wise that would be 1, 6, 4 minor, 5, and then 1, 6, 4, 5. As always, my lesson materials for this are going to be very thorough, tab and notation in Guitar Pro and PDF formats, with the audio track synchronized within the Guitar Pro track, so it's truly interactive. Also, my backing track will be included. You can get that stuff a couple of different ways. You could join my Patreon, where you get access to all of my lessons, past, present and future, and loads of bonus stuff. Or you can buy this as a one-off purchase at the Gumroad link. Either way, thanks for your support. For the lead part, we're going to be taking this C major chord here and isolating strings D and B. So that would be the 5th and the 3rd of your C major chord. And we're going to hybrid pick those together, plectrum on the D string, 3rd finger on the B string. And we're also throwing in a nice little slide there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice how we had a rest on beat 1. Then the chord changes to A minor. We go along the same strings up to this A minor triad here. Strings D, G and B. That's the first inversion A minor triad on string set 2. Again, hybrid picking, plectrum, 2nd finger and 3rd finger. Again, rest on beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now F minor comes along. We go down to these lower 2 notes of an F minor triad, built off the A string. So that's the root and the flat 3. Hybrid picking again, plectrum and 2nd finger. And again, rest on beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No slide on beat 4 this time, but we are now going to slide from an F major triad, very briefly, barely enough to even register the existence of it, into this G major triad. So it's frets 10 and 9 on the A and D strings. Again, think of that as being part of a G major triad. That's your root and your 3rd. F minor, G. And then we have these lovely harmonics. So this is 12th fret of the G string. I'd recommend using your little finger for that. 1st finger at the 7th fret of the D string, and then back to the little finger. 12, 12 on the E, then the B. Kind of gives us the sound of a C major 7 chord. We leave that to continue ringing across the C and the A minor, and then we have that F major, you know, the 4 chord, where we're going to go down to this. The lower 2 notes of this F major triad root position string set 2. So this is root and major 3rd, and you can put another little grace slide into that from a semitone below. Take the same shape 2 frets higher to coincide with the change to the G7. Of course, now these would be 2 notes from the G major triad. F, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, G, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the end of the intro. Okay, now we move on to the A section. Progression-wise, it starts off very much like the intro. You have the C, A minor, F minor, G7. We do that 2 more times. So that's 3 times in total around that progression. Here's the 3rd one. And then we have the C, A minor, F major. And that would be the entire first A section. Now for our melody on top of that, we're going to start with a bend from B to C at the 12th fret of the B string. A nice semitone bend. Add a touch of vibrato on top to really sweeten things. Make sure you're getting the bend and the vibrato from the wrist. I've spoken about this a lot in previous videos, especially the one on The Thrill Is Gone, so do check that out if you've not seen it. And then we follow the melody down to the 8th fret of the B string, but we're going to harmonise it with the 9th fret of the G string underneath. So that's... And then the F minor comes along and we play this. It's like an F minor 6 chord. Very pretty sounding. This also is a diminished triad, but because we're playing this over an F minor chord, we think of it within that context and we call it F minor 6, where you're thinking minor 3rd, 6th, root. We're going to play the D string first, and then using my fingers I'm going to pick strings G and B together, and then move up a whole tone, and then bend both of these notes a semitone to reach the next 2 notes along in an F minor triad, root and flat 3. With the bend. That takes a bit of practice. As I've said on other videos that deal with bending 2 strings at the same time, I find that what helps is to think about just bending the top note and putting all your energy into that, and this finger will likely follow along for the ride. Always test it against the non-bending version and try and match it. And then we move this back down to here, and then we grab the 7th fret of the B string and bend, exactly as we did here. The same notes, of course, B bending to C. And then we're going to play pull off 8 to 5 on the B string, and then bend the 7th fret of the B string a semitone up to meet the pitch of the 8th fret. Really nice with a bit of vibrato on top as well. And let the bend slowly fade its way back down. Just adds that extra touch of emotion. And then we're back to this again. Back down to here. Slide 6 to 8 on the B string. Now over the next C major chord, we're just simply going to match it with a C major triad. And then the chord changes to A minor, so we grab the A root. And then F minor comes along and we play this. F minor triad, root position, string set 2. We're going to miss out on beats 1 and 2, but play the remaining beats of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Over the G7 there, sliding in this shape. From 3, 2, 3, strings D, G and B, up a whole tone to 5, 4, 5. This is something I've spoken about in loads of my country-themed videos, this idea of taking a 6th down to a 9th, so a G6 and a G9, or in this case the other way around, G9 up to G6. You could also see that as a G13, because it's the 5 chord in this case. Therefore it's functioning as a dominant chord, and when you put a 6 on top of a 5 chord, you get a 13, or we call it a 13. And then we play, resolving back to our C major chord, back on the first notes we played at the very start of the song. B string 5th fret, D string 5th fret, back and forth. And then we're back to that beautiful harmonics run, sort of the signature phrase of the tune. F major comes along now for our turnaround, so we grab an F major triad here to a G major triad. Now that would be very much like what's played on the original Santo and Johnny version. What I throw in is a little bit of a country bend. Very simple. You can do it on the first 3 fingers or the last 3. All I'm doing is bending the G string, a semitone, and then releasing it back. So F major to G major. And that would be the end of the first A section. Do remember that if you want to book one-to-one Zoom lessons with me, you can do so at the TidyCal link in the video description. It will show you all of my available slots going forward, so just select the one that suits you best and book yourself in, and I look forward to meeting you on the day. Okay, so now on to the second A section. It's going to be very much like the first one, and in fact you could basically play the same thing again, but we're just going to use this as an opportunity to try some new little techniques, so some sliding instead of some bending, that kind of thing. Speaking of which, instead of bending this 12 to 13 like last time, we're going to do a slide instead. Second finger slides from 12 to 13, then slide all the way down and fill out that shape we had before. The 8th fret of the B string and the 9th fret of the G string. F minor, same as it was before, this is unchanged. This bit's the same as well. Now this bit's almost the same, it's the same notes, but instead of grabbing the A root note here, we go and slide down to it on the 2nd fret of the G string. Now just going back to that previous phrase, the F minor one, something I overlooked to mention is that the timing was different on both times there. So it's all about the placement rhythmically of that first note. Sometimes I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So bringing it in on beat 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Whereas the second time I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bringing it in one beat later, so beat number 4. It's not too important, but those little nuances can help keep things sounding fresh. Okay, so back to where we were. A minor, F minor, same shape as before. That triad, again hybrid picking anything that contains multiple notes. We take that triad and play it on the last couple of beats of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Play all the same kinds of things as before, except we're resolving to that C root note this time. Now we're getting into what we call the link, which is a 4-bar passage that connects the 2nd A section to the B section. And the changes are simply this: C, F, C, C7. You can hear that C7 setting up the F chord, can't you, that starts the bridge, because that would be the 5 of F, of course. Okay, so over that link we're going to play F, C, where we're just thinking of triad-based notes again, over the F, the root and the 3rd, and then over the C, same thing, root and 3rd. And then we're going to do one of these country bends. So really we're implying this, which is very similar to that thing I mentioned over the G earlier, where it's going from like a 6th type of chord down to a 9th. In the case of C here, it's that kind of thing. C6 walking down to C9, courtesy of A minor triad moving down to a G minor triad. In this case we're taking the lower 2 notes of those shapes and pre-bending at the 4th fret, bending both strings up a half tone, and then 3rd fret. Tricky to do that. Again, pay more attention to the top note with the bend and you'll probably find that the G string will follow along quite nicely. And I like to use my last 2 fingers. Now into the B section. F major. Grabbing these 2 notes from an F major triad, or an F major chord shape. The 5th and the major 3rd. So just before we continue on with the B section, let me outline the chord changes we're going to be playing over. You've got F for 2 bars, F minor for 2 bars, C, C7, back to the F, F minor, then G7, B flat 7, G7, with a stop, leading to the final A section. So over the first 2 bars of F, F major 7, 2nd inversion, so it's got the 5th in the bass. Walking down, grabbing 13 on the B string, and then we go to one of my favourite voicings for a minor chord, F minor 6. What a beautiful voicing. This is where I'd really love to have a Bigsby on this guitar. I mean, how cool would that chord sound? And some nice vibrato. And then we go to another favourite minor chord voicing of mine, especially if the chord is functioning as the 4 minor. F minor, major 7. I'm visualising an F minor triad, but changing the top note up to the major 7th. Then walk down the top string. 12, 10, 8. Resolve everything to C major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we play over the C7, this beautiful C9 voicing, rootless. Looks like an E minor 7 flat 5 chord, and it is, but it's also a C9 where the root is implied. Or some people like to include the root on top, but in this case, the melody is actually on the B string, so we don't want to put anything above it. Now we're back to this again for the F major. This time, instead of going F major 7, we're going to take that top note and bend into it. Then the 8th fret, and then F minor. Just this lovely interval, 5th and the minor 3rd, bend again. And then over this part of the progression, G7, B flat 7, G7. We're going to take this voicing, G13. It's like the top 4 strings of a G13 chord down here. Imagine a G13 played this way, which is very common. And imagine you're taking that low E to the top E, and then moving that voicing to the next string set. Follow along 3 frets high with the same shape to follow the change to the B flat 7. So that would be a B flat 13 now. And then take it back to the G13. You'd often hear Danny Gatton playing around with that kind of voicing, but on the top 4 strings, and throwing in little hammer-ons along the way like this. Really cool. Okay, then we have that little walking bass line connecting us back to the final A section, tying from the G up to the C note. Now again, this A section is going to be very similar to the others, but we're going to use a few other little tricks to access the melody. So far we've been on the neck pickup the whole time with a fairly mellow tone. Now's the time we switch to the bridge pickup, get a bit more bite, and enable us to do some of these volume swells. So we're back to playing the melody, bending the 12th fret of semitone down to the 8th fret. And then we're going to do the F minor as before, F minor 6. And then as before. And then this bit, again with that slide down to the 2nd fret. Now here comes the outro. Everything breaks down into free time here, and we lead the way as guitar players. We play F minor, and then that little trick we spoke about earlier, G7, sliding down in semitones this time. And let that hang, build the suspense, keep the crowd on the edge of their seat, and then play. Which is the original tagline from the Santo and Johnny version, played on steel guitar. Top E string, sliding 3 to 5, then all the way up to 12, and then come down to this E minor triad, which really at this point we're thinking of as the top 3 strings of a C major 7th chord. And then we go to this voicing here. This is over a G7, or implying a G7 at least. So that would be like a flat 7, a 3rd, sharpened 5th, and a flat 9. One of those jazzy altered chords, right? So you've got C major 7, G7 altered, and then simply C major 6 to finish, barring the top 4 strings at the 5th fret. So the ending is going to sound something like this. Okay, so that concludes my arrangement of Sleepwalk, the old country classic, originally written by Santo and Johnny. Do check out those other versions I mentioned. I'll link to them in the description. There's a great live Danny Gatton version and a beautiful Arlen Roth version featuring none other than Levon Helm on drums. A piece like this, of course, makes for a great song to jam through with other guitar players. Often you'll hear this being played at guitar sessions and guitar hangouts. I'd recommend practicing along with my backing track, but also put down the chords in your own looper so that you get really familiar with the chord progression as well as the melody. As always, make sure your string bends are on point, keep the notes ringing out for as long as possible, and make sure that nothing sounds choked or lifeless. Okay, so a little bit of tone talk. This of course is my Nacho-caster, my pride and joy Telecaster. Beautiful guitar with the Nacho pickups as well, just sounds sublime, feels so good to play. I have pyramid 10 gauge strings on here, they're maximum performance strings that I really like, and they're pretty cheap as well, to be fair. I was using my usual Dunlop H3 pick, they're sort of thick little Jazz 3 purple ones, and I'm plugged into my Emprise Falcon amp, which is like the perfect deluxe reverb. This is the second incarnation of this amp that I've had, and it's got everything I could ever ask for. It's basically my 69 Deluxe reverb, but with the addition of a tube bias trem circuit, very much like the one on my vintage Princeton. Beautiful sounding thing. It also has a really effective master volume and a bright switch to disengage or engage the bright cap circuit. I was using a little bit of overdrive from a Brown Amp's carbon pedal, just to provide a tiny bit of grit, nothing too extreme. I had the gain at 10 o'clock and the level and tone at noon. Very transparent pedal. That whole setup was recorded through my Universal Audio aux box, going straight into my Apollo Twin interface into Logic Pro. Thanks for joining me guys, as always it's been an absolute pleasure. Please do comment down below with your thoughts on this lesson, as well as any questions that you might have or ideas for future lessons. Also make sure to like and subscribe, it makes a massive difference, and share this stuff with your guitar playing buddies, it really helps. Alright, thanks guys, see you again next week, take care.